Yes, this is a crossover. I'm your host of Locked On Phillies, Connor Thomas, and with me I have Javi Reyes, your host of Locked On Padres. We both would like to thank you for making this your first listen every day, free and available wherever you get your podcast. So it's easy to track down all of the work that Javi and I have been doing, and it's much easier now considering we are two of the final four teams in the Major League Baseball playoffs. First off, before we get into the whole argument about who's winning what and whose team's doing what better, sir, congratulations. We were talking before we came on. Who would have guessed it would have been us two sitting here doing the NLCS preview crossover? But hey, here we are. Absolutely, absolutely amazing that these two teams are the ones that are here.
Yeah, sorry about that. I was just finishing, drinking all the Dodger fans here. So I've been kind of keeping myself, replenished. Important to drink
I
water.
love it.
You know what I mean? It's important to do that. You got to stay hydrated, and that's what I've been doing the past couple days, ever since the greatest day in
Yeah.
sports life, especially over the last while, the
I'll show
clinching
you.
game.
I got the fresh bottle. Well, it's not fresh anymore. I drank it, of course, yesterday. But we have the bottle of champagne for the celebration for the NLDS series here. So yeah, we're both fully hydrated,
Oh
feeling
yeah.
pretty darn good, man. And as improbable as the Philadelphia Phillies victory over the Atlanta Braves was in the NLDS, you could argue that the more improbable of the two was you guys taking down the Dodgers, who were
Mm.
obviously the best team in the National League, pretty much start to finish this year. Had trouble with them in the regular season. They basically owned you guys in the head to head. Like we at least played the Braves pretty well all
Mm.
season long. I think the season series was only split by like 3 games or whatever. But you guys were dominated all year, and then all of a sudden playoffs come around and you look like a different team. What have you guys been doing? What have the Padres been doing that have led to you taking down the Dodgers and being here in the NLCS with the Phillies?
Oh man, where do I even start? I think it starts with it's funny because and not to be that person who's like, see that one thing that I said a while ago is right, but one of the things I talked about and I also had about your team as well. Um for the Padres, the Dodgers, you just had to hope that they've done this before for the better half of the decade. Not even better half, the better 80% of the decade. They've mostly, unfortunately, fallen in the playoffs. And that's not always a big upset, especially because baseball playoffs can be weird. It hasn't always been a collapse, which is a word that's been thrown around a lot in baseball circles these days. It's not necessarily that. It's just, look, bottom line is outside of 2020, the Los Angeles Dodgers probably at this rate are primarily going to be remembered as, a little bit more fall of Buffalo Bills back in the early 2000s, right? That's primarily how people will perceive them more so. They're not the 98 Yankees. They're not the, heck, to a degree, they're not even the Houston Astros, although that's a whole nother thing. And I'm upset that I even brought that up. Um, San Francisco Giants are going to be remembered for consistently winning. The Dodgers
Right.
are mostly going to be known for you lost to Howie Kendrick, you lost to the Padres, who, if I have the tweet still in front of me somewhere, it's got to be around here somewhere. A tweet from Sarah Langs that basically broke down like how big of an upset this is. The
Mhm.
Padres had 22 less wins than the Dodgers, and that is the largest postseason like upset if we go by the regular season win total since the 1906 White Sox over the Cubs. That's right.
Jeez.
118 years. I think 118. I can't do math, but bottom
116.
line, 100. Yeah, it's a long time. 116.
Yes.
Thank you, Connor. It's a long time, and I think that what happened in this series was momentum. I know there's arguments about whether or not momentum exists. Whatever. I think that the Padres, you saw, they had the dynamite top three in their pitching rotation
Mhm.
and the bottom of their lineup made plays. Trent Grisham has been this year's Jorge Soler, right? Like he really has. He's been
Yeah.
this absolute freak in the playoffs. He's playing good defense. He's hitting for power and even hitting for good on base stuff, which is basically the antithesis of what he did during the regular season. And it's been awesome to watch, right? There's always one of those guys that comes out in the playoffs every single year, it seems. And he's been one of those. And just timely hitting, and clearly just a great vibe, right? Like you saw the crowd at Petco Park go absolutely nuts. I mean, absolutely nuts. It like World War III had just ended, right?
Yeah.
Like that type of nuts, and it was so lovely to see, and it just made me emotional. I was like, this is great because they really did kick the Padres' butts all year, and they've been kicking their butts since the second half of last year too.
Mhm.
And if we want to go further, For the better part of the decade, they've been getting their butts kicked too. So, for them to beat the Dodgers, a team that the fan bases go at it nonstop. They're going at it as we speak. And the Dodgers fans, as usual, trying to come up with some excuses. You saw the
Yeah.
LA
Oh, the playoff
Times.
system, this,
Yeah,
that,
the
and the other
playoff
thing.
system, which
Dumb.
famously, it only started this year that we did this, Connor. I don't know if
Yeah.
you knew that. It's
Yeah.
it's only them that suffers the wrath of this. And Jeff Snyder of Locked On Dodgers, the Sny dog. I know he would always make fun of me when I brought up, hey, part of the reason it was a sweep in 2020 was because they didn't have Clevenger and Lamet, who at the time were their top two. And he's like, yeah, it's just excuses. Well, I want to hear what they say now. Oh, it just fuels me, man. It fuels me.
Man.
And I think that what happened is also, talked about this on my show, just fundamentally, it's great to see a team that went for it. And same thing goes for the Phillies too, that they're rewarded for that. The Phillies they didn't necessarily have like a giant trade that occurred. They actually, heading into the season, right? They had like all this roster problem.
You get
They're stuck
Castellanos,
in
you
the
got
middle.
Schwarber bring
Right.
in, but
So they
you
just
make the
say, you know
moves.
what? We're just going to sign guys. Like, screw it. Let's just double down. They sign Castellanos. Doesn't work out that great. You get Schwarber, who's an absolute home run freak. And then, you hope for guys like Suarez to get back to it. Noel has a good year. I like that they didn't abandon it. They said, well, we might as well, right? It's not like our farm's that great. So they went for it. And I remember talking to you, or maybe I did. I don't know if the last time we crossed over, I talked about how the Phillies were the team that I thought could really kind of make a run. I also thought the Mets would, but the Phillies just they have the three in the rotation. And I think that defense matters, but I wonder if maybe we should start looking at defensive stuff as something that might not matter as much when you get to the postseason, because the guys could just have a good stretch. Right? You saw in the Cardinals series, they were
what
the ones
Alec
that made all
Bohm
the
was,
errors.
and
Alec
everything.
Bohm, who's been
It's
a freak,
crazy.
and he's losing his mind. There is some really big like hype around the Phillies for sure, and I think that that's what we kind of saw happen. And as I talked about in my pod, what is Atlanta primarily known for? Atlanta sports
Choking.
They tend to choke. Now the Braves are an exception, and they did win last year. But on top of
Yeah.
being Atlanta sports, and you won last year, I'm just saying this is how it's very unanalytical, very not empirical. But hey, that's just how it crumbled this way, man. And I've been rambling too long. Let me let you celebrate.
No, you're good. And the great thing about this, right? And I'm so glad we're here. Not just because I enjoy your coverage of the Padres and everything you
Thank
do,
you.
but I do enjoy the way they play baseball, the way they built that team, what they've done, and I don't mind you going long there because the similarities between these two teams are striking.
Mhm.
A lot of things that you're saying for the Padres could be said about the Philadelphia Phillies. Now, you guys went a little bit more all in when it comes to the moves you made at the deadline and everything there to get Juan Soto, to get Josh Bell, to bring those guys in to make the splash of the trade deadline. But it's very similar storylines for where these guys are. Big playoff droughts both ended. You get home playoff games. For you guys, you had one, but no fans in the stands last time. So the first home playoff game with fans. The Phillies, the first home playoff game in general in over a decade. You go ahead and you see a division rival who are perennial contenders and you knock them off in the NLDS. We both did that. You have guys that have been there for a while that you built up. You have the big signings between Harper and Machado from a couple years back that are
Both
now
same
beginning
free
to pay
agent
off.
class, yeah.
Unbelievable, both within like a couple weeks of each other. And it's absolutely incredible that these two teams took rather similar paths to be here and have a lot of similar storylines, have a lot of similar strengths. They both have a great top of the rotation. They both have a lineup that's really hot right now. So everything you're saying about the Padres and how that fan base is feeling and what your team is doing really well to get to where they are now, which is the NLCS, is echoed with the Phillies. The only difference is the names. And in some cases, the names aren't even different because this is the NOLA Bowl. We've got Austin and Aaron going at it. So it's really cool, the crossover between these two teams and the storylines and everything there. Now, it's not all perfect. Not everything is all roses for these two teams. Of course, you're looking at things where you're seeing another team coming in. The downside of the crossover between those storylines is, as good as the Phillies fans feel, you have to know that the Padres have a team that has made their fan base feel the same way because they're just as hot, they're just as talented, they're just as dangerous. They're favored in the series, but it's a close one. When you look at the Philadelphia Phillies and you see the team coming out, What off the bat is the biggest thing that concerns you about the matchup with the Phillies?
The matchup with the Phillies, the biggest thing that concerns me is obviously that Bryce Harper guy's pretty good. All right. We don't need to talk about Harper. He's
8 for
great.
16 in the NLDS, 2
Yeah.
homers.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
And they were homers. You know
Oh,
what I
yeah.
mean? Like, oh, they were like,
Yes.
oh, he hit that, you know?
Yeah.
um, I think what concerns me the most about Philly right now is if their bullpen is really going to be not necessarily lights out. I haven't been following it totally, but I felt like that was one advantage the Pods might have over them, you know. And I
Mhm.
know that they didn't have David Robertson, who injured himself in a celebration apparently, which is extremely Philadelphia, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
It's extremely Padres or Philadelphia, one of those two teams, right?
Mhm.
And if they're going to be pitching well, like Alvarado and some of these other guys, I forgot if they still have Brad Hand on the team.
They
I'm
do. Sir
They
Anthony
do.
Dominguez,
If
Zach
guys like
Eflin now in a bullpen role. Yeah.
I like Sir Anthony Dominguez. I don't know how he's been, but like if those bullpen guys can come and be solid, that's where I'd be concerned because the Padres have had a lot of people discovering their bullpen, right? You have
Mhm.
Hader, who seems to be back, only one earned run since September 5th. Like, just awesome stuff there. Luis Garcia is solid. Robert Suarez throws gas. He's a 31-year-old rookie. How can you
Mhm.
not root for him? And you've got the rest of Nick Martinez can come in and give you decent innings as well. But if the Phillies bullpen is going to play up to snuff, that concerns me because my initial thing is Wheeler's great. Aaron Nola is a strikeout machine, certainly, and Ranger
Mhm.
Suarez isn't too bad himself. And then you've got Syndergaard in there and whatnot. My thing is, can you get to the bullpen? Because maybe this is just like past year, and it's
Mhm.
kind of like it's just associated with the past years. The Phillies have had atrocious bullpens, at least like 4 out of the last 5 years that I could remember. You know, like
Yeah.
genuinely atrocious. How have they been doing so far this year, though, or
No,
in the playoffs?
the bullpen's been outstanding in the playoffs.
Mhm,
Sir Anthony Dominguez is incredible. Jose Alvarado is incredible. So Sir Anthony Dominguez is giving you 100 plus and some nasty off speed stuff from the right side. Jose Alvarado is giving you 100 plus with like a 94-mile-an-hour cutter that's unhittable from the left side. So you got two guys just throwing absolute gas. Brad Hand's been good in his short couple of relief appearances since coming off the injured list because his first appearance against Atlanta was his first time in a game for about 3 weeks. So he's still settling back in. Zach Eflin's still getting used to what's going on being in the bullpen as a converted starter back to the
mhm,
bullpen. But they've been outstanding so far this postseason. So that's really been a huge part of it. You've got the great starting pitching, and then the bullpen's held up their end of the bargain, and they've protected leads. But if you want to protect more than a lead, Javi, you got to check out our friends over at Simply Safe because
mm,
the numbers don't lie. In the last decade, over 4 million people have chosen Simply Safe Home Security to protect their home. It's like the Phillies bullpen. I mean, it's just you give everything over to them, they've taken care of business. You don't earn the trust of that many people like the Padres bullpen has, or the Phillies bullpen has, or Simply Safe has without doing something right because your safety is the only thing that matters. It's Simply Safe. Let me tell you. So this is I love Simply Safe because my mom lives over in Jersey by herself. I live in Philly now. I moved out of the
mm,
house. My younger brothers moved out. Someone broke into that house like 3, 4 years ago. And the
mm,
first thing we did, luckily she wasn't home. They took some jewelry, but the first thing we did was call Simply Safe, change over the security system. Way more comfortable with her living alone now. She's way more comfortable and feels safe in the house. So I'm a user. I trust them with my mom's safety. That's about as big of an endorsement as you can give. They're incredible.
mm.
You can personalize what they've got to what your personal safety needs are. And especially with listening to what we're doing here with the crossover in any Locked On MLB podcast, well, you go to simplysafe.com/locked on MLB and you'll save 20% on your Simply Safe security system when you sign up for an interactive monitoring plan, and you'll get your first month free. That's simplysafe.com/locked on MLB to learn more. There's no safe like Simply Safe. Now, when we look at, I know we just talked about keeping leads safe, but we're also talking about two lineups that have been really, really good offensively and can
Mhm.
get even hotter at any time. I mean, what the Phillies have had with Rhys Hoskins coming out of his slump, Bryce Harper, we talked about just 8 for 16, batting 500 through the NLDS with 2 home runs. When you're looking at guys at the bottom of the order for the Phillies, Gene Segura, Bryson Stott, Brandon Marsh, like it takes a lot of concerted effort to get through this lineup without having trouble, and they're seeing the ball real well. And it's the same thing for the Padres. And that's how you get to this point, right? You've got to have Your main guys carry the load, and you also have to have some of the guys near the bottom of the lineup get hot. Who are some of the big surprises offensively for you guys so far this postseason?
Oh man. Part of me wants to say everybody just because they haven't been, the bottom of the Padres lineup, right? That's been a big thing that people have talked about. Already talked about Grisham, and just in case Philly fans might not be familiar, like this is a guy who wasn't just, a poor offensive player. This isn't say even Nick Castellanos didn't have a great season, right? No, no,
Right.
no, 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 no. Grisham offensively was one of the worst out there, up there with Cody Bellinger for like the worst. Weighted on base. He batted under 200 this year, and he has a lot of called strikes where he just doesn't even swing the bat. So he's been bad this year, and all of a sudden he's like Byron Buxton, right? Like he's been phenomenal. So he's there as well. And then for the rest of the team, people would say Ha-Seong Kim. I'm not that surprised by Ha-Seong Kim, and maybe this is just a vibe thing, his infectious smile and the fact that he's a great defender for sure, but Kim is the type of player that I just felt like would rise to the moment. He did well in the KBO League. I just feel like he's someone who could produce in these type
Mhm.
of games, right? And there's definitely a feeling of he's the guy that's replacing Tatis. He's got a huge, obviously, replacing a player like that, a lot of expectations, and you're hoping, can he live up to the role? Well, he has, and he's been tremendous in that role. And then I think Jake Cronenworth started off a little bit slow. He went 0 for 13 in the Mets series with 6 strikeouts, and then he had the big hit in game one of the playoffs and game two. And then, of course, the clinching game in which he had the 2 RBI single and he lost his mind. The rest of
Yeah.
Padres fans everywhere. So I think those are the guys probably to keep an eye on in terms of the bottom of the order. Both Ha-Seong Kim and what's his face, uh, Jake
Cronenworth.
Cronenworth, I
Yeah.
just said, and then also Trent Grisham, obviously, those being the big ones. I know Kim isn't necessarily gonna his stats jump off the page, but he comes up there when you need the big hit, and he could play there. So I would watch out for him, and nothing's gonna get by him defensively. And otherwise, that's basically the full force of it. And then Manny Machado and Watto are playing pretty well,
Yeah,
which is
those guys
great.
are pretty good.
Yeah, which is great considering one of them you traded. It's like the Jordan meme, right? For F them kids, except AJ
Yeah.
Preller just said F them prospects. Like he just said, I don't care. We're
It
trading them
worked.
all. And he's been great. He had the big RBI in that game as well. Um, from what I'm familiar with, has Will Myers been bad? I think he's been bad the playoffs, but I don't care because he's
Mm.
there for vibes, and that's what really matters
Sick.
with Will Myers. You know what I mean?
That's
He's
awesome.
great.
Yeah.
And then Josh Bell, kind of same thing. He's there for vibes and the fact that
Mm.
he's not Eric Hosmer. That's the big plus for him. Can't
I,
say
I
much
was
about the rest
going
of the
to
lineup, but
I was gonna avoid mentioning him because I know you're probably so happy you don't have to deal with talking about him anymore. And yeah, I know how you feel about Hosmer. Now, we talked about the concerns with the Phillies that you had. For me, the biggest concern with the Padres, I know the lineup's incredibly talented. Know what Juan Soto is. Know what Manny Machado is.
Mhm.
The Phillies have actually, as well as you can handle Juan Soto, have handled him pretty well in his career. And part of that's because the Washington Nationals were pretty bad around him. And they haven't really gotten hurt by Machado in the few times they've seen him
Mhm.
in his career. So my biggest concern is really that starting pitching. You've got a rotation that matches up with the Phillies really well. And when I look at what the Phillies' strength is, well, someone's going to have to beat Zach Wheeler and Aaron Nola, both of them, not just one of them. You're going to have to beat both of them in order to pull off a series. But the same can be said about what you're looking at for the top three guys in the Padres rotation. Uh, how strong is that rotation going right now? And how much worry is warranted for Phillies fans when they see the guys that they're going to have to face this series?
Oh man! And first of all, forgot to mention Jerkson Profar, 280, 400 on base. I gotta mention Profar, one of my favorite players on the Padres, and Austin Nola, who has been on fire. And I
Yeah,
honestly forgot. This is why you have to prepare a little bit more before podcast. But in the postseason, 381, 440, 476 slash line because
that's pretty good.
why not? Terrible offensive catcher all year,
Hmm.
wakes up in the postseason.
I hope his
I don't
brother
know.
goes up and in on him.
Yeah, right.
I hope Aaron
Yeah, I
buzzes
can't.
the tower.
That first at bat is going to be really fun, right? Like that's going to be a really, especially for baseball nerds everywhere. But
Yeah.
in terms of the Padres rotation, it's interesting because Blake Snell is one of those guys where the stats jump off the page. He did well against the Dodgers in his second start. Didn't have a great start against the Mets.
Hmm.
He tends to walk a lot of batters. I don't know what the Phillies how they perform against lefties, but that's something to keep in mind as well. Um, I think the big thing with him is I feel pretty good about him against this Phillies lineup because unlike the Mets lineup is a very on base, put together good at bats, not necessarily too many home runs.
Hmm.
Blake Snell does walk a lot of batters, but Philadelphia, I could see him maybe with not maybe necessarily your Seguras or your Real Mutos, but Hoskins. That's going to be a big
Yeah.
one because we've talked about a lot. He was great in the playoffs. I adore, and I mean adore, Connor, the bat spike. That
Dude,
was
it was
awesome.
amazing. That's
It
going to be
was
one of my favorite videos ever.
it's like how has that never been done before? You know what I mean? Like I'm
Yeah.
actually surprised that I've never seen that before. That's why it was so sick. But Hoskins, very streaky player. And Blake
Mhm.
Snell, big strikeout guy. So it's possible that he has that like 3 strikeout game with Hoskins. Harper, he's tremendous, whatever. All right. I'm not going to talk about him. But
Yeah.
Castellanos, Schwarber, those are the type of players that I could see become a little bit more susceptible to a pitcher like Blake Snell, who in the second half of the season was either second or third in strikeout rate among all starting pitchers. And if you don't count Jacob DeGrom, I think he was second because DeGrom is inhuman. But that's why I say to watch out for Darvish. He's going to be the interesting one as well because he tends to give up a lot of runs. This has been discussed a lot in the first few innings. And
Mhm.
Philadelphia strikes me as a team that would love to jump on him quickly. And if they can
For
get
sure.
him early, then you're game. And then you're like, oh my God, the Philly onslaught is coming. It's 8-1 already somehow, right? But if not, then Darvish is going to be a tough one. And then Musgrove is just captain consistency. He's not one I would expect Philadelphia to be able to do too well off of him, but not necessarily too bad. I just don't think that it's going to be a pitcher that they light up. I would
Is
definitely be
is he going to be
fearful.
doing the ear stuff again, or is he going to be all right this time? It's
Wasn't
unbelievable.
that was a riot? That was a riot. Like it's like the Dodgers fans making excuses, but like the
Mhm.
Mets fans did it.
Yeah.
I get it. I
It's
get it
classic Mets
because
stuff.
yeah, it's classic Mets stuff, right? Like it's just
Yeah. I hate that
oh
fan base.
Buck.
So I hate that fan base so
Yeah.
much.
It was so ridiculous that people
But
did
no,
that.
he's just straight up nasty. I mean,
Mhm.
those guys you mentioned are, and it's just going to be such a great series.
It has
And
that potential, man. It really
uh,
does. Crazy fan
champ,
bases too.
dude, the environment at Citizens Bank Park.
Mhm.
I saw it was like out of Petco. These are going to be tough places to steal a road game.
Mhm.
Someone's going to have to. It's going to be a classic. And something. One of the things. I have a couple more as we wrap up. One of the things that I find interesting in the differences between how these teams got here. So the Phillies, when you look at how they beat the Braves, the last 2 games at Citizens Bank Park, well, blowouts, 9-1, 8-3, just
Yeah.
like taking advantage of the Braves early, and they never really felt all that close of games. Meanwhile, I'll read you off the scores. I know your listeners know, but for the Phillies fans who aren't aware, a 5-3 loss to the Dodgers, a 5-3 win against the Dodgers, a
Yep.
2-1 win against the Dodgers,
Yep.
and then 5-3 again in the final game. So 5-3 was the magic number, but all of those close, close games, margins
Mhm.
of 2 runs or less in every single one. Do you think it's a benefit to the Padres that they played these closer games more consistently and the Phillies haven't really, or do you think it doesn't matter once the series shifts?
This is why sports we will never know no matter how many stats we have, we'll never be able to measure stuff like this, right? Like,
Right.
yeah, it could be something that's unforeseen. They're just more prepared. And it was against the Dodgers who they loathed. You saw how much they celebrated, right? The
Right.
fans were going nuts. For them, if they're only up by 1 against Philadelphia, that might be right. Like that might be their like, oh, we got this. Josh is gonna come in, Hader's gonna be great. It could
Mhm.
be. It could be. These are the things that we can't track or we can't measure. Of course, I'll say yes because why not? Yes, it matters
Yeah.
absolutely,
Right.
and I think that that's that good experience. But it's also true, man. The Padres are very much they're not a blow you up in 1 inning team. Absolutely
Mhm.
not. Philly's done that so far. They did that during the regular season, certainly too. Not the Padres. The Padres are scraping together runs. They can have a 3-run inning, but that might be all they get. And then they rely on pitching and good defense and just situational hitting. I think is
Mhm.
what, and especially you saw that obviously in the clinching game against the
Right.
Dodgers that I will try to bring up as much as possible for the rest of the postseason. And just the Cronenworth one, the Kim one, the Austin Nola infield single. Oh my God, it was beautiful. It was beautiful. So
Oh,
I'd
dude,
say
amazing.
that's the thing to look out for. It might be some more classic, low scoring baseball, at least, unless, a Snell doesn't have his best stuff or Darvish, especially early on. Definitely. It might be just 5-3. Yeah, apparently 5-3 is the favorite score, right? They love
Yeah,
winning these 2-run games. And thankfully, if Hader is back, that's something that Philly fans would have to watch out for, because if he really is back, and it seems like he is, a lot of strikeouts, 20 in his
Mhm.
last 14 and 2/3 innings, I believe. So he's been doing that, not giving up too many hits. Control is a lot better. If he's back, then yes, that does not matter then. If the
Yeah.
Padres are only up by 2, that could really be it. And I know the Philly fans and the team is like, 2 runs, we're good. Against this Padres bullpen, might not be the case. That's
Yeah.
how the Padres could potentially win the series.
Now the bullpen's really good. I will tell you because I'm not sure if you saw this when it happened earlier this year with Josh Hader and the Phillies when he was in Milwaukee. There was a
Mm.
game where they came in down one when he was in the middle of like that 40 straight innings scoreless streak or whatever he
Mhm.
had going. It was absolutely incredible. And some guys at the bottom of the order, you had it was Matt Vierling went yard off of him to go
Mhm.
ahead and set up Alec Bohm to also go yard
Oh,
off of
man.
him in the same inning, which was just incredible to come back down. I think both with 2 outs as well. And there may be that little element we talked about, like the Padres feeling like they're better in tight games because they've done it against the Dodgers so many times now, multiple times in that past series. Well, Hader might not have the same type of power over the Phillies mentally as he has over other guys. When you see him come in like, oh, this game's over. Well, they've done it before against him, even though it was with a different team. But hey, same kind of color scheme. Who knows? Maybe if you squint a little bit, you might be like, oh, is he still on the Brewers? I see some yellow in there. So maybe they'll be able to convince themselves they can hit him. But yeah, I'm not looking forward to tight games down the stretch with that bullpen.
Yeah, it's there's a potential that you got to chill in the Brave series. Believe it or
Mm,
not, you actually got to hang out. You were like,
yeah.
"Oh my god, this is just the party." This might be that series where it's like, "Oh my god." And a final game could be 7-2, but it'll happen in one inning. You know what I'm saying? Like it'll
Right.
be like the whole game was close and then they broke through, right? It's Oh my gosh,
And that's
it's
playoff
a lot.
baseball,
It's a
right?
lot. It's playoff baseball, man. I mean, you get moments that you wouldn't expect. Alec Bohm making great defensive plays and slamming his hand on the
Yeah.
floor over at third base because of how hyped he was, stuff like that. And then
Mm,
Segura with his little oinky doink hit that gets past the
yes.
Cardinals, right? And then the Cardinals defense implodes. Nolan Fraudinato, as I like to call him. I'm just kidding. Arenado's great.
Yeah.
I just like
He,
I like
it's
placating the
funny.
mob of Padres fans every now and then. They hate
Yeah.
him for some reason.
Oh, I don't know. Interesting.
They hate him. Yeah, they're just like, man, he's better. It's like they're both great. I don't know what we're doing here.
You had him in division for a little bit when he was in Colorado, so
That's
you got to
also
deal
true.
with that.
That's also true. It's funny. Hey, well, we don't have to worry about him now.
Yes, he is
So yeah,
home.
man. Yeah,
Everyone's home besides the
everyone's home,
Philadelphia
man.
Phillies, the San Diego Padres, and whoever ends up in the ALCS to meet the Houston
Mhm.
Astros. So that's awesome. One more thing we're going to do before we're out of here, because we've gone nearly a half hour. I want to make sure we keep this to enough time that people can get it in before game one tomorrow. I'll ask you, what's your prediction for the series? Give me the games. Give me the winner. Who do you have?
Nah, man. No.
No, you're
Can I
not
say
going
no?
to. You can say no. I'll tell you what I have, though. I'll go first if it makes you feel better. I don't think if it goes 7, the Phillies are going to go on the road to the West Coast and beat San Diego in their house.
Mhm.
I do think the Phillies win the series, and I think they win it in 6. I think it's going to be hard fought the whole way. And the reason I have it in 6 is because, well, it's going to give the opportunity for Aaron Nola and Zach Wheeler to throw 2 times. And
Yeah. Mhm.
that's a scary proposition for any team in baseball right now. Astros, Yankees, Guardians, Padres. It's not a great matchup. And you could say the same the other way, but I'm taking Phillies in 6. If you don't want to give a prediction, that's fine. But let's just do this. If the Padres win and go to the World Series,
Mhm.
it will be because they did what in this series?
I think it'll be that their bottom players that we aren't expecting continue to produce offensively, because we know what we can get from Manny, we know what we can get from Soto, and to a degree even know what you can get from guys like Cronenworth and Profar. But Grisham, if he can step up, if Kim, and if you get Brandon Drury and Josh Bell to do some stuff potentially, depending on how many games Drury plays, that would be it. And also, you mentioned the fact that they might get 2 starts out of their best guys. That could be an issue with the Padres when it comes to the fact that Yu Darvish is getting up there in age. Is he going to be well rested? He'll try to pitch, certainly, if they need him, but will he be rested is the question. And then on top of that, Mike Clevenger has not been very good. Sean Manaea has not been very good. If the Padres need those guys to pitch in big games, that could be where the issues kind of arise. It's going to be very interesting to see how Bob Melvin manages the team. Maybe he does a piggyback thing. Maybe it's Manaea for 2 innings, Clevenger for 2, and that's their quote unquote 4th starter, right? It could be what they do because those guys have been horrid in a lot of ways. And Clevenger is just, whew, not very good at all. So that would be the key, is if they can figure that out, and if the bottom people lineup can kind of come through.
Yeah, listen, I feel, but let's end on a good note. Both teams playing incredibly well right now.
Yeah.
Magical seasons for both sides, regardless of how this one ends. And it's going to be a really, really fun, exciting, entertaining series in a whole bunch of different ways. These are two teams that fully deserve to be here, and it's going to be fun to talk about it along the way. So, man, I appreciate you taking the time to check in. Best of luck to you. I hope the Phillies come out on top, but again, we've crossed over a couple times this year. I'm a fan of the Padres and how they did it. I know you respect the Phillies organization and how they've done it as well. So it'll be a fun series. I want to thank everybody real quick as well for making Locked On Phillies and Locked On Padres your first listen every day, both free and available wherever you get your podcast. Make your second listen Locked On MLB with our good pal, Paul Francis Sullivan. Sully does great work covering baseball in general, so it'll give you the big storylines from the playoffs in total. We'll talk about the American League and everything there, too, if you want to catch up on that. It's available wherever you get your podcasts. And Javi, why don't you tell everyone where they can find your work over at Locked On Padres as the playoffs continue?
Of course, man. At Javipeno, JAVIIPENO, to continue to see me post memes and dreams and all that stuff. And then at LO_Padres, if you want to see me just sporadically over the last few days, I just keep tweeting things about the series, just in all caps and all, like, even though it's done, just all that stuff. Maybe, keep drinking the tears of the Dodgers fans, whatever. You could go check that out. And then obviously the YouTube Locked On Padres. Good vibes, man. And
yeah, for sure.
I forgot to wear this for the pod, but yeah.
There you go.
Padres. Yeah, I forgot to wear it.
Going.
It's literally right here.
Oh, that's great. Well, we got it on for the last couple seconds. And of course, you know where to find my stuff at Locked On Phillies, at Connor Thomas 975, and at LO_Phillies. It's going to be a great series, man. Look forward to watching it. And again, not winning luck, but best of luck to the Padres and what should be an exciting series. And we will talk to you all next time on the next edition of Locked On Padres and Locked On Phillies.